First of all, I would like to wish you good luck studying, and I hope that you do well on your finals during final exam week. And we are here today to tell you a few hopefully positive things that will be good tips for you while you are preparing for and taking your final exams. So, we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing that you want to pay attention to is what you do before your exam. It's not just during the exam that is important. And I know you've probably heard this from the time you were young taking classes, but you should not attempt to cram all the information in right before the test or even the evening right before. Cramming is actually quite counterproductive. You're less likely to retain the information, and also another negative is that cramming actually increases stress and it negatively impacts your sleep, and it can also decrease the amount of preparedness that you have. So I know it's something that procrastinators, which a lot of us are, tend to do. But just remember that cramming is probably going to cause you more stress, less sleep, and overall be a negative impact on your test-taking abilities. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. Don't stay up all night studying. Your brain is not going to function the way it should during the test if you haven't gotten a proper night's sleep. Getting a good night's rest is going to help you think more clearly during your exam. It's also going to help you cope with any stress and test anxiety that you might have. And I know a lot of people are they feel a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress during their test and right before the test. And all of that, again, is a negative impact on how well you perform on your test. So, make sure you're not cramming. Give yourself time to study. Take some breaks. Make sure you go to sleep at a decent time. And then another given is that you need to try to eat well before your exam. You don't want to eat a lot. You don't want to make yourself tired during the exam. You don't want to eat a lot of sugary foods that are going to give you a rush of sugar and then cause you to be tired later. Same thing goes with caffeine and coffee. It might help you right in the moment, but if you have another exam following one, or if you have another task, or the test is really long, you're going to feel that when you come down from that sugar and from that caffeine, it's going to cause you to be tired, and it's going to, again, be counterproductive. So just watch the things that you're putting in your body before the exam, the day of the exam, and make sure that it's actually helping and it's good brain food and giving you the proper energy that will last. Make sure you arrive early to the test. Again, for those of you who have test anxiety, waiting to the last minute, trying to gather all your things, trying to find a place to park, all of those things are going to cause you to be more nervous. So make sure you get there like 5 to 10 minutes early. This is going to help you decrease your stress level. Gives you time to settle in, helps you to get organized, breathe, relax, and then just, overall mentally prepare yourself. Also, make sure that you're not putting too many other tasks on yourself the day of the exam, especially before the exam. That could cause you to rush around. You're focusing on other things when you really just need to be focusing on your test in particular. Stay positive. I know this one sounds goofy to a lot of people, but if you're just not that comfortable taking tests and you're not feeling like you're really prepared, then you will experience a lot of negative self-talk, like, I'm going to fail this, I'm not going to do well, I'm not going to get the grade I want, I might not pass this class, I'm not going to graduate on time. All of that kind of talk is not going to be helpful. It's going to cause you to be more stressful and might even affect your ability to remember the things that you've studied. So you want to try to tell yourself, I've studied as much as I can, I'm as prepared as I can be, I'm going to get this information out, and I'm going to do well. I'm going to do well. So the more positive you are, the less stressed you're going to be. And hopefully you have prepared and planned so that you truly are ready for the test. Make sure you dress comfortably. You don't want to be uncomfortable. You don't want to be overly hot or overly cold. These are all small things, but they can all affect how you feel, how you think, how you concentrate while you're taking a test. So you don't want anything else to get in the way of your ability to just strictly focus on getting the right answers out and being able to process, to analyze the information that's in front of you. So again, just something comfortable, not too restricting, not too hot, not too cold. And one other thing I wanted to mention in terms of staying positive, when you get there and you arrive early, if you know that other people are anxious, you know that you have friends or classmates who are anxious test takers, who have not negative outlooks on the class or about the test, it's probably best to try to steer clear of them, because if you're trying to keep a positive attitude about the test and about your ability to do well, then you don't want to chit chat with other people who may feel differently, who aren't ready, who are, throwing out some of those negative thoughts and feelings, because it's contagious. So make sure you just kind of stay in your own corner there, focus on what you're doing, focus on the test, and focus on relaxing yourself beforehand. During the exam, there are things that you want to focus on doing that are going to help you, hopefully. First of all, I know when you get the test in your hand, what you tend to want to do is just jump right into it. But a lot of times when you get the test, especially if you're doing an in-class exam as opposed to something online, your instructor will go over the test instructions, maybe tell you how grading works, could talk about time limitation, the structure, procedures, curving. There's all kinds of instructions that could happen, and you don't want to miss out on all those. So you might have the test in your hand, but you still need to listen to whatever instructions you're given that could help you hopefully get through the exam a little bit easier. Make sure first thing you do is scan the entire exam, see what's on there, get familiar with it, know what the structure is, and then go from there. Once you see, let's say it's all multiple choice, then we have certain strategies. But if you find out that there's some essay or some short answer along with multiple choice, then what you want to do is go to those short answer questions and essay questions first. That's because that's what you've really got in your mind, and you need to get that information out. When you look at multiple choice questions, you may tend to want to go to those first because they look easier, but the content is there. You don't have to create any content, and you don't want to get what you know mixed up with possible choices or negative choices. So get those other answers out before you go to any multiple choice. Now, when you get to multiple choice questions, this even works for short answer. Just make sure that you go ahead and get the information out that you know first. Get the easy ones out of the way so you can spend more time on the ones that are challenging or harder for you. So do a first pass through the test. Make sure you answer what you would consider to be the easier questions for you, and then go ahead and mark or skip the ones that you don't know on the first pass. After that, go back and then answer the ones that you've skipped. Answering the easier ones hopefully might remind you of details for the harder ones, and you might get some little tips and pointers that help you remember things. So get those easier questions out of the way first. It allows you to take your time on the more challenging ones as they come up. So make sure that you get those easy ones out of the way, go back and answer the ones that you skipped. You have to be careful and make sure that you're paying attention to where you have skipped questions. And some people will tell you not to skip them, just do them so that you don't forget to go back. But I've always felt like if I don't know it, I'm going to skip it and I'm going to come back to it, and hopefully something will jog my memory along the way. Make sure that you've confirmed all your questions are answered, and then check your answers if you have some time left over. But the main thing throughout all of this is keep your mindset focused on the test. Don't worry about what grade you're going to make. Don't worry about whether you're going to miss that question or not. It is what it is at this point. So you want to make sure that you're focused and that your mind stays there. Don't pay attention to whether other people are finishing and getting up and leaving. That doesn't actually mean that they did well. So don't let that worry you. Just stick with what you're doing. Focus on what you're doing and get that information out on your exam. Don't worry about what's coming up afterwards. Don't worry about dinner. Don't worry about anything else. Your mind should be staying strictly on the test. Now let's talk a little bit about what you might want to do during a multiple choice test, because I know a lot of your tests might be like that. And some might not, because let's say you take an accounting test and you've got a lot of calculations to do. You take a writing test, you probably get essays to write, and those will have their own strategies, but we can't talk about all of those. I'm just trying to give you a few pointers here. So let's say you do have some multiple choice tests, or at least questions on your test. Number one is to read your questions carefully. Mark any questions that you're unsure of. Just like we were saying before, take a pass through, go ahead and answer the ones that you know and you think are easier, and then go back and answer the harder ones. Now, some things you want to watch out for in multiple choice tests that trip people up. Watch out for these qualifying words, such as absolutes. If you see the words always, never, completely, only, this may mean that there's a certain meaning for that question. The rest of the sentence means one thing, but then when you put the word always with it, it means something different. And even though that statement might be true, is it always true? Is it never true? So those are things you want to watch out for, because they are tricky on multiple choice questions. If it helps, circle those words so you know that that's something you need to pay more attention to. Then you also have the negatives, words like not, least, and except, because you're going to look at that phrase, it's going to sound true, but then you have the word least or except in there, which actually makes it a negative response. Again, circle those words, make sure that they don't trip you up and that you know you're answering those in the right way. I always suggest to try to anticipate the answer. And what I mean by this is, when you first look at the question, look at the prompt and then try to think, do I know the answer to this? If you think you know it, or you're close to feeling like you know it, great. Now look at your choices. Is one of those choices similar to what you were thinking? If so, you probably should trust your first choice and go with that. And next point here is that you should trust your first choice. A lot of times your first choice, even if you're like, I don't know why I guessed that, well, something in your brain is probably telling you that you do know that you do have some information on that, or at least something in the exam or something you've studied is leading you to that particular answer. You don't know how many times I've heard people say, I had it right, I went back and changed it, I should have just left it alone. Story of everything in the testing center. Should have just left it alone. So trust your first choice. Don't leave answers blank unless, of course, you're penalized for wrong answers, meaning you're not just going to get them wrong, but you'll get points taken off. Most of the time you're not, so my suggestion is, if you don't know the answer, you can a lot of times go through and pick out maybe one or two of the choices. Let's say there's 4 choices. You can pick out 1 or 2 that you know are not right. You've got a 50-50 chance after that. Pick out the one that sounds least or most correct. And, hopefully some people are good guessers, some are not. But it's better than just saying, I have no idea, and skipping it. You at least might have a chance of getting it right. And then lastly, as always, check your test over. Don't just finish and throw your hands up and I'm done. Go back, look and see if you've skipped anything. Look at ones you marked that you're not sure about. See if any of the questions that you've answered since then help you to know that answer better, which oftentimes is something that does happen. And then don't fret about it, because once you have answered and you've done the best of your ability, then you can relax, because you might have another test coming up and this one's finished and this one you're done worrying about. So multiple choice. And finally, just a few tips for the short answer questions. There's not a lot here other than knowing the information. The short answer questions really require that you do know it. And a lot of times fill in the blank or short answer questions may have multiple answers, possible answers, but what you need to do is try to think about what you've learned in class, what your instructor has taught you, and what your instructor would want the answer to be here. What has the instructor focused on, even though multiple things in your opinion or your feeling or what you've read sound correct. And if you're not sure which, go with what you feel like is the most appropriate answer. You can write as much as you can possibly write. Of course, there are limitations, and especially time-wise, but make sure that you have read the questions carefully. Sometimes there are multiple parts to a question. Don't just answer half the question and think you've finished and move on. Even if you need to, underline and put question part 1 of the question, part 2 of the question, so you make sure that you answer it fully. And if you don't know all the answers, write down as much as you do know. meaning if there is a 2 or 3 part question and you don't know all 3 parts, write down part 1, write down parts 1 and 2, because a lot of time instructors will give you partial credit, not just give you a 0 because you didn't get the whole thing right. So always do what you can, always write down something, don't leave things blank, and make sure that when you begin, you have looked at the whole test and that you have thought about how much time it's going to take you to complete the different portions of the exam, so that you aren't leaving anything completely blank at the end, that you've given yourself enough time to at least come up with some portion of an answer that will give you an amount of credit. Now, in terms of the stress and the anxiety that you might feel, I just want you to know that it doesn't mean you're not prepared, that it is normal and it is actually a good thing to feel some stress and some anxiety. It keeps you on your toes, it keeps your brain focused and strong during the test. If you didn't have any stress or anxiety at all, I would have to say that you probably didn't care about what grade you make. You're overconfident for some reason, because even people that have studied, I would say excessively, generally feel a little bit of anxiety and stress when they're taking a test, just because of the nature of what it is and the fact that you're being evaluated and graded. So when you feel that stress, when you feel that anxiety, don't let it overtake you. Just know that it's normal. It's a reaction that you should have, and it is something that is normal and helps you perform better. So with that said, I hope one of these slides or some of these tips you will find helpful, and that it will help you be more successful during your finals and do well on your exam. So once again, I wish you luck, and hopefully everything works out for you the way you're hoping.